Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Global Career Forum, the international online recruiting event organized for the MBA students from top business schools. We welcome to today's online session with Satori Consulting, and we have the pleasure to welcome for this live session our keynote speaker, Amy Famiglia, who is a talent manager at Satori Consulting. As this is a live Q&A session, I would invite all participants to ask your questions in the Q&A panel on the top right side, and we'll convey them to the speaker. Amy, warm welcome.
Thank you.
So perhaps to kick off this session, may I ask you to introduce yourself, brief background, and your current role at Satori Consulting?
Sure. As mentioned, my name's Amy Famiglia. I've been with Satori Consulting for about 12 years. Prior to Satori, I worked for Accenture for about 15 years, and at Accenture, I was a management consultant working mostly across telecommunications companies, helping them with customer relationship management issues. At Satori, I am the talent manager, responsible for all of our recruiting, staffing, hiring, and then internally our talent management process, our performance management processes, and a variety of other internal processes here at Satori. So a bunch of my career was actually being a management consultant, but now I've transitioned for the last several years to talent management.
Excellent, thank you very much. Could we spend also a few moments on the company's mission, the main business?
So our business is to work with clients and help them solve problems at the simplest level. Similar to other management consultant companies, we work directly with our clients hand in hand. We deploy small teams to assist mostly in helping our clients manage large change transformations. So specifically what we do a lot of is setting up program management offices and helping execute on major change transformations. However, our work spans a variety of other things, such as risk management, process design, organizational effectiveness. We deploy small teams, anywhere from 1 to 10, just depending on what the client needs to really sort of understand what their business issues are and help them address those. We work across industries, so we're not industry specific. However, most of our clients do tend to fall within financial services or life sciences. That's where the bulk of our work has been over the past several years, although we do work across other industries as well, doing a lot of those core management consulting offerings, as I mentioned. We also have a small cybersecurity practice, which is cross-industry and specialized in helping clients deal with cybersecurity issues.
Excellent, thank you very much. A question from audience is, could you give us an example or more details in the type of consulting you do versus other firms?
Well, I mean, probably what we do is similar to other firms. We're not specialized in any one particular area. So for the most part, we set up program management offices and help run PMOs and PMO processes. We help clients understand their changing regulatory environment. So across financial services and life sciences, as I mentioned, which are two main industries that we serve, those are both regulated industries, constantly dealing with change. And we're often looking at the operations of those businesses and helping them understand how changes in the regulatory environment affect their operations. So how do they need to change their processes and organizations to become compliant in those spaces? We are not technology implementers, so to speak. So we're not the firm that's coming in and implementing an ERP solution, for example. However, many of our consultants do have prior experience in technology, which is very useful in doing what we do, because managing cross-organizational programs often means that we are working with, talking to, and understanding technology organizations. So how are we different from other consulting organizations? You know, we're operational in nature. We're not super strategy focused, so we're not like a McKinsey in that we don't come in and set a strategy and then leave before implementing it. If we are setting a strategy, we're usually sticking around to implement it. And we're not like a systems integrator, as I mentioned. We're not doing hardcore technology organizations. So those are a couple of the ways in which our work is slightly different, but you'll find the type of work that we do at larger firms as well. It's just we don't do all of those other more focused types of work as I mentioned.
Thank you. Next question from the audience would be, candidate read on your profile, through self-reflection, organizations can discover their true self and reveal their core, helping them achieve awareness and understanding and uncovering a new sense of identity. And the question is, could you please elaborate on how you do that?
I'm not sure where you saw that. That was maybe something on our website. So I probably can't answer that question all that specifically, other than we work very closely with our clients to put together a customized solution to manage their problems, which is a little bit different from what some of the larger firms do in terms of coming in with more prescribed one-size-fits-all solutions. So, I would say we kind of facilitate and work closely with our clients to come up with something that sort of best answers what their issues are at the moment. So whether it's looking for a different identity or tackling a particular business problem, we really try to put together a customized approach and not just sort of sell a solution and then bring in somebody else to implement it.
Thank you. Could you walk us also through the company structure? What are the different departments and where do you tend to have MBA profiles?
Sure. If I click over to the Satori overview, am I able to do that? I can't.
Yes, you can just advance the slides.
Okay, now it's working. All right, so on page 3, this is a picture of our structure. So we're set up similar to other consulting companies. So if you see, starting at the top, managing directors, we have 3 partners who are the founders of Satori and the owners, and they set our overall strategy. They sell a lot of our work, and they manage a lot of our client relationships at the highest levels. Underneath the 3 partners, we have what we call principals, and you'll see there's 3 boxes on this picture, but they're sort of, what those boxes are representing are sort of different nuances of the same leadership level. So we have 5 people who are what we call principals, regional directors, or practice leads. They're roughly the same level, but they focus on they focus on slightly different things. So some of them are more kind of account team managers. So they are working within an account and overseeing several projects within that account. They're also focused on delivery themselves and expanding our footprint within that account. We have people who are considered more regional directors, so they have a little bit more of a geographic focus and may not be involved in delivery, but more involved in business development. So the percentage of their time is focused probably more on business development and less on delivery, but they will also do delivery. So for example, we have somebody in the UK who's a regional director who's works on growing our business in the UK, and then we also have someone in Boston in a similar type position. Somebody who is what we consider to be a practice lead is someone who's more focused on growing our business within a particular space. So I mentioned cybersecurity. That's the one example that we have someone in that position now. So he is focused on growing our cyber practice and is also at times involved in delivering cyber projects himself. So we have about 5 people at that level at the moment. And then on the left-hand side where it says delivery, this is where most of our people will be, depending on where they are within their career. So, you know, you see several levels. Those are similar titles to what you will see in any management consulting company. We have what we call a competency model, where we have identified the core skills and competencies that we feel people need to be proficient at in order to be an effective consultant. And depending on an individual's prior experience and background, we place them at a level that is appropriately aligned to our competency model. So progression within our firm is a component of building proficiency at those skill level, at those skills, and at each career milestone, we are looking for additional proficiencies within those skills. So there's an element of time in terms of you need to have spent a certain number of years to develop proficiency in any one area, and it's also a component of performance as well, and how quickly somebody is kind of mastering those skills. So with respect to where do new MBAs typically fall within, it really depends upon what the individual's prior experience. So they could come in as a consultant, they could come in as a senior consultant. It's really, I would say, significantly experienced people who would enter in the manager area. So it's very individual. On the other side where it says operations, these are just the people who kind of manage our day-to-day operations and work with our people. This is not a career path. Those are actually 3 different positions. So I'm the talent manager. I also work across our leadership team in helping to implement the firm's strategy and understand what everybody's needs are, and making sure people are effectively staffed according to what the client needs and what their interests are. And then also helping managing performance across the firm. And then we have a couple people who are focused on just the operations of our firm, client billing, cost control, and managing our office. So that's the view of how we're structured.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next question would be, what do you look for in your MBA hires? What do you look for today that you didn't necessarily look for 5 years ago?
You know, when we're looking to bring in new talent, and I have to say we do more of a just-in-time recruiting, so our firm is small and nimble, and we really try to time bringing new talent in with the needs of our business. So we're not bringing in just a set number of people on a yearly basis and not really sure what we're going to do with them. So we usually look for people who have some of that prior consulting experience, so project program management, client relationship management, whether it's internally focused or externally focused, you know, kind of understanding how the different functions of a business work together, so you can kind of look across and help present recommendations, and understanding of business processes. Prior experience in the industries that we focus more heavily in is a plus, but ultimately timing also has to do with what we're looking for at any point in time. So we're kind of always looking at our pipeline of upcoming opportunities and trying to align the timing of which we bring people in with projects that look to be good fits. So there's an element of that sort of core consulting experience that we like to have, and it doesn't have to come from prior consulting. just something consulting-like, something that is client-focused internally or externally, where an individual has had experience in managing projects and understanding the different elements of project management, and has initiative, leadership, all of those kind of core things that consulting companies look for.
Thank you. So one of the positions that you also currently advertise through Global Career Forum is a consultant position that we can see here on the far left side. And a question related to that is, do you have an up or out model for career progression? How long do people stay in the same position, and how do you promote career evolution?
Okay, so we don't really have an up or out model. It's not, because I know in other consulting firms the ultimate goal is to move up and sell work, and so you have that, you know, that up or out model if people, as they progress within the career model, are not really showing that sales aptitude. So as I kind of mentioned earlier when I talked about our model, there are positions for people that are not as heavily sales focused. So somebody can be excellent at execution, and we want to keep those people even if they're not, you know, great salespeople. So it's not up or out, but it could be up and stay at a certain position if they're not showing the aptitude to perform at that kind of sales level. Because, you know, ultimately for consulting, you need to keep selling work to remain viable. So as long as somebody is a strong performer, doing something that we do, whether it's delivery or sales, you know, we're going to want to keep them.
And what would you say is the skill that MBA students underestimate the most? What is the challenge for them when they join your company?
I mean, I would say the challenges that people face will depend upon what they're used to. So we're, you know, again, we're a pretty small company, so sometimes there's, well, not sometimes, there is an element of ambiguity in that. So somebody could start with us and not be deployed to a project right away, but still we're looking for that person to add value. So you kind of need to be able to function independently, identify areas for improvement without necessarily being told what to do. So if you come from a prior, you know, from an organization that's heavily structured and very prescriptive in terms of what people need to do, that's a little bit of a struggle. So, you know, we don't have a window that you take your laptop to when you're having an issue with it. We have, you know, our consultants who have shown interest in certain areas will focus on helping with your laptop, for example, but it's kind of a change from being at a very large organization that has a department to handle everything. So, you know, you kind of have to be resourceful and autonomous and proactive in terms of being able to add value when not on a project, and even when in a project, looking for other ways to contribute. So that's probably what, you know, what somebody might struggle with, depending on what their background is, where they're coming from.
Thank you. Next question would be if you also offer or recruit through internships throughout the year, and would these opportunities transition into a full-time role?
We do have summer internships. Typically, we've already been through that process for this year. And when we do bring in summer interns, they spend about 10 weeks with us over the summer, and our hope is to find full-time employees through that channel. Like, it's completed for this year, but we do it every year. We usually start looking in the October timeframe. We do actually usually bring in first-year MBA students, so between the first and second year of the MBA. And again, it is our hope that if the intern does well and it's kind of mutually a positive experience for them and for us, then we do look to make full-time offers based on that.
Thank you. And so for those who would want to apply, what are the typical steps in the interview recruiting process once they submit an application?
Do you mean for full-time hiring or?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
for full-time.
Well, as I mentioned, we do more of a just-in-time hiring. I'm always looking for strong talent to build a pipeline of potential employees. For somebody who's in school full-time, I usually say that as you're approaching graduation, so sometime in the spring, feel free to send your resume to me, letting me know when you're going to be available, and we can start the process from there. Our process involves several steps, so we do kind of an initial screening call, which is typically with me, which is an introductory call, getting to know each other, and then if that goes well, if it looks like a mutual fit, then we do a series of in-person interviews. So we do like a skills behavioral type interview, we do a case interview and a partner interview. We do like those to be done in person. However, if people are not from the Metro New York area, we will do some of that over the phone. And then at some point, if it makes sense, we would look to bring the individual in, from out of town. But I will say that most of our hiring is for the Metro New York area. We have other areas that are potential growth pockets for us, but that kind of depends on the timing. So we don't cover relocation expenses. So, it would have to be somebody who's primarily interested in being in Metro New York, I would say in the foreseeable future. At some point, we may be looking for other geographic areas depending on, how our business evolves over the next year or so.
Thank you. Are there specific business schools that you target?
There are some specific schools that we target for our internship process. We don't typically target MBA schools regularly for full-time hiring, but based on geographics, sometimes we will post on the job boards at schools that are closest to the Metro New York area, so places like NYU, Cornell, Columbia, Rutgers, those are kind of the places where, I've been proactive. However, I am happy to get resumes and review applicants from anywhere, anybody who's interested in being in the Metro New York area.
And the international students, are they eligible to apply? Would you sponsor for a visa?
We do, yes.
Great. You talked briefly about the internship and also the full-time positions. At Satori, how important is the summer associate internship?
I'm not sure I understand the question. You mean how important is it in terms of getting a full-time position, or I'm not sure what you mean.
The question is in terms of experience before transitioning into a full-time role.
Oh, well, we only hire 2 summer interns typically, so it's pretty competitive and hard to get those positions. So it's kind of one is not dependent upon the other. If somebody is a summer intern and they do well, it is a great way for them to then get a full-time offer, but it's certainly not a prerequisite for somebody who's qualified, who is looking for a position at the same time we have a need.
Great. You mentioned it's highly competitive, and it brings us perhaps to the next question that we received from the audience. What can a job applicant do to stand out?
For the internship or for a full-time position?
For either.
I mean, the ideal candidate has had prior consulting experience. I'm not going to lie. When I get a resume from somebody who has worked at a Big Four, that is, ideally what we're looking for, because it's, oftentimes people will start at a Big Four consulting firm and they'll stay there for a couple of years, and then they'll decide that, ultimately they maybe don't want to be in that sort of large organizational hierarchy. They want to kind of branch out and be in more of an entrepreneurial firm, and they'll go back and get their MBA, and then they still like consulting. And so, I really like people who have had that experience. However, that doesn't mean that everybody has had that experience, but somebody who has kind of stands out and comes to the top of my, the top of my list, specifically if they've done work in the industries where we have a lot of projects. So like I said, life sciences or financial services, but these things are not prerequisites. So again, somebody who has, maybe not had consulting experience, but they have worked at an organization where they've managed projects, where they've worked with internal or external clients. Those are the resumes that look good to me because they are most relevant to what we do. But there's many people who work for us who have not had that experience, and they've transitioned well and they've done well. So having relevant experience is the biggest standout.
Thank you. You mentioned a few times that it is a relatively small firm, and I wanted to ask you if you could share a bit more about a company and team culture.
So we have a very collaborative culture, which is one of the nice things about being at a smaller firm. And a lot of people who have transitioned to work for us from like a Big Four environment, for example, they really like doing management consulting work, but they don't like being sort of confined by some of the organizational rigidity that you find in a larger organization. So for example, promotion is very much tied to timing, in terms of you need to have a certain number of years in before being considered for promotion to the next level. There's activities within a larger firm that are limited to people who are above a certain level. So, and there's also geographic limitations in terms of how many people can be promoted to a certain level, and those things are sort of prescribed by global HR structures and whatnot. So we don't have any of those prescriptive things. And so people tend to be very collaborative versus competitive, because if the firm as a whole does well, then everybody as an individual is going to do well. So we're small, we get to know everybody, we kind of get to know what everybody's areas of expertise are, and people are very willing to be collaborative and to lend a hand for the benefit of the overall firm, versus having kind of that what's in it for me mentality, because we just don't have the organizational barriers that will oftentimes breed a level of competitiveness. So it's collegial, it's collaborative, people are smart and ambitious like you see in most consulting firms, and enjoy being able to understand the impact of what they're doing on the firm as a whole. So it's a nice culture, and the people are great, and we do monthly kind of social get-togethers. We do some yearly employee events. So it's people tell me, people who I meet with, I try to meet with everybody on a regular basis, and they always say that, the culture of our firm is one of their favorite things.
Thank you. What are the working hours like?
Well, in consulting, you're trying to please the client. So I think it will definitely vary based on the project that you are on. You could be working a regular 8 to 5 schedule, or you could be having crunch times and having to work overtime to make sure that you're delivering what the client is looking for. So it really just depends on your client project. I don't, and again, it just depends. So I don't want to say that, people aren't working overtime. People definitely do. It's a consulting environment. Sometimes you have to travel. So it's definitely not a 9-to-5 job, but there's definitely times when things are sort of kind of standard work week, and there's times when it's not.
Excellent. And do consultants tend to specialize in one industry, or can one remain as a generalist?
No, people really are more generalists because oftentimes staffing has to do with timing, so we don't deploy people to certain industries. But, you know, that being said, sometimes there's projects that need somebody who has a specific expertise, and so sometimes people do tend to kind of stay in the same space, but you know, they can just as likely roll off a life sciences project, and what staffing up is in financial services, and it doesn't require prior financial services expertise, and so they can very easily go over and manage a project on that side. So people are definitely work across industries.
Excellent. So perhaps just before we wrap up today's session, what would be your advice for MBAs trying to land a role with Satori Consulting?
My advice would be is to reach out to me as you're approaching you know, the spring when you're looking to graduate, spring semester before graduation. Send me your resume and a cover letter, just letting me know of your interest and why, and you know, I'll review the resume, and if it looks like a match, definitely set up a time to talk.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for taking the time to be with us here today for this online session for the Global Career Forum.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. I hope it was helpful.
It definitely was. To the attendees, we will put the recording of the session on the event website within a few hours. Thank you again.
Thank you.